Hey folks, John Boym here of the Let's Talk Beef podcast. Coming at you today from San Antonio, Texas. I pulled into San Antonio late yesterday afternoon, got settled into my place, and just working on the podcast this morning, getting it all ready to get launched here today. So I'll be heading over to the National Cattlemen's Convention here later this afternoon and checking that out, and I'll be there for the next 2.5 days. So looking forward to that. But anyways, this week's podcast, I sat down with Mark Messer of Messer Beaver Creek Ranch in Richardton, North Dakota. It's a bit of a different podcast this week. When I met with Mark, they were in the middle of their wheat harvest and they were going balls to the walls. So we did the podcast right in the tractor. So you're going to hear some back noise. That's the tractor running. Mark was running the grain cart, and we were going back and forth between the combines and the semis. So it's a little bit more noise there, but I think it's really good content. Mark was a great guy. It was kind of a last minute thing. A friend of mine from Minnesota called me and said, "I got a guy in North Dakota. If you're going through, you should stop by." So we did, and Mark was super gracious, super generous, and it was a lot of fun. So I hope you enjoy listening to Mark and my conversation in the tractor, and thanks for listening, guys. I'll start just with a little introduction that, Richardson, North Dakota. We're just south of that. I'm with the Messer Beaver Creek Ranch, and this is a first for the podcast. We're doing it live in the tractor because Mark's so busy that we're doing wheat. They got thousands and thousands of acres of wheat that we got to get combined, so we got to do it from the tractor. We're in the grain cart following the tractor, or following the combine right now. So I'll just let Mark have a little introduction of who you are and what you do, and then we'll kind of get into some more stuff after that. But just a quick one, Mark.
Sure. My name is Mark Messer. I'm part of the Beaver Creek Ranch operation. We run beef cattle. We have small grains. We have canola. We have soybeans. We have sunflowers, lentils, peas, and oats and barley, and corn. Corn is a major, we grow a lot of corn for our beef cows. We grow a lot of corn for cash, to sell as cash. So I'm just part of the operation, and there's 4 of us brothers here, and my dad run the operation right now.
Okay, so just you gave me a little article before I came over here, and I read through some of it. It's 11-page article, so it's a lot to read. But it just kind of tells a story. So how did you guys end up in North Dakota, like your family, and like how did you end up here?
Well, my great-great-grandfather homesteaded in this area, in this part of Stark County, and he started a homestead there along the Hart River, and that's where my great-grandfather had lived. And right now, the place that we're at right now was established. He homesteaded that in 1889. He got his patent, his home patent there. I mean, the homestead patent in the early 1900. And then he branched off. They had children, and our generation and my dad's generation started the operation that we're on right now in 1951. And in 1951, there wasn't anything where the current place is right now, and it's been built up since 1951 to what it is right now today. And it consisted of a large dairy operation, a large beef operation, and a large farming operation, where we raise all those different crops, and mainly to feed our cattle and our dairy cattle. And in 2017, we decided to sell the dairy cows and expand the beef herd a little bit more and expand the farming operation a little bit more. And when we went out of the dairy business, it was 1951 till 2017 was the first time that there wasn't a dairy cow on the place, where everybody always had dairy cattle. I mean, everybody had a dairy cow, and we were one of the larger operations in the county when we had sold out. So now we're concentrating more on the farming operation and the beef operation.
So your grandfather, or your great-great-grandfather, is that what it is? Your
Yes.
2 greats?
Yeah.
So he homesteaded in 1889. So where did he come from, or how did he end up? You know how he ended up in North Dakota?
Well, they came through Ellis Island just like all the immigrants came through at that time, and they were German Russian heritage, and they came to North Dakota, and the Homestead Act, when they started the Homestead Act, where you could homestead 160 acres. So he homesteaded 160 acres, and then he homesteaded another 160 acres, and he held on to one of the original homesteads through the Great Depression, because back in the Great Depression you had to pay the taxes on the land. If you were going to homestead it, you had to farm it, and he lost one of the quarters that he had homesteaded, but the original homestead that he homesteaded, where the place was, where the sod house and the brick house is on, we still have that right now to this day. And we had a chance to buy what he lost back in the early 1900s. So we actually have both homesteads, the half section that he homesteaded originally.
So was he a farmer back over in Germany, Russia area, or what was he doing over there?
Yes, that's what he was. And they were, back in those days, from what I heard, they were persecuted. I mean, they were freedom of religion, freedom of speech. They couldn't hardly do anything. And they just wanted a better life, is what they wanted when they all came over here, and they left their home countries where, they left a lot of people behind. They left a lot of their relatives behind, but they didn't think they had a choice, and that's what they did. They came over here and they started moving west, and from Ellis Island they started moving west and ended up in North Dakota. Okay,
so he homesteaded in 1889, and so how many children did they have, and how did I'm sure they had a lot. That's what they did back then. But so how many kids, and how did that family start?
Well, their family started. They had 10 children, and my great grandfather had 10 children, and one of the offsprings was my grandfather and my dad's dad, and in their family they had 11 children, and they all branched out into different places in the county and different places where they eventually farmed and ranched. And my dad, I have 6 brothers and 5 sisters. My dad and mom had 11 children, and right now there's 4 of us farming and ranching on the original homestead. And my mom and dad have 43 grandchildren, and I think it was close to 80 great-grandchildren. So we branched out quite a ways.
Yeah. So your dad and mom took over the operation in 51. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yep.
It wasn't. I mean, the operation that my dad established in 1951, there was nothing there. The home place where my dad grew up is still in another family, in his brother's family. But the operation that we started, there was nothing there. Where the home place is right now, where we're at right now, established in 1951, there was nothing there. We built everything up, as a family, as Philip Messer Jr.'s family, my brothers and sisters. We built that up to what it is present day.
Okay. So what was it like growing up then? I guess so it started in 51, where I don't know, I don't want to presume your birthday. So what was it like growing up then and building to what you are now?
Well, it was, we started out, we had dairy cattle, we had a small amount of beef cattle, we had a lot of hogs, we raised a lot of pigs, we had some chickens, and not many. We had a few sheep back then, but it eventually, we grew into where we thought the beef operation and the dairy operation was going to be the most successful for us. So that's kind of what we did when we moved out of the hogs in the late 70s. And in the early 80s, we expanded the beef herd. We expanded the dairy herd a little bit. And we remodeled barns and when we eventually quit milking, we had built a barn where you could milk 24 cows at a time and automatic takeoffs and actually state of the art, but it was getting to where it was a little older too, where you'd have to expand or go into a robot situation, where you could have robots and stuff, but there wasn't another generation that was going to take that over and stuff, so we figured we were going to concentrate more on the farming operation and the beef operation and perfect that a little bit more than what we did. So we had sold out the milk cows in 2017.
So there's 4 brothers here farming together, and you all kind of have your area of expertise, or per se, how do you want to label that? But so how did the 4 of you pick your roles, or what?
Well, they were kind of natural. My brother Jerry, he was in charge of the dairy operation when the dairy operation was going, and he actually served when the dairy operation was going. He served on the National Dairy Board and stuff, where he'd come back with different ideas and stuff and how better to run his part of the operation. So he took care of the dairy operation, and he was actually the chairman of the National Dairy Association for a long time. And as soon as he was, what you might say, kind of in charge of a lot of your checkoff dollars that we have, the checkoff dollars that you use for the dairy and stuff. He was in charge and on the board of making sure that it was going to the right places and stuff, and from that it spawned off like the fuel up to place 60. He's kind of that's kind of what he was into and stuff after the dairy cows and stuff like that left. So he's still a part of that, the fuel up to place 60 out of the dairy checkoff. They get to use some of that funding for that. So, and then I always was taking care of all the smaller calves, so I eventually took over the beef operation, and I always did like the smaller calves and stuff, so I took care of the beef operation. And then my brother Scotty, he was in charge of a lot of the trucking and stuff, and the feedlot operation. He feeds all the cattle in the wintertime. And my brother Greg is in charge of the farming operation, and he basically makes sure everything is running smooth for the farming operation. We help each other out in each one of the enterprises that we have, and he does all the maintenance and stuff, anything that needs maintenance or anything like that, he's in charge of that. So we, each one of us, kind of fell into our own little niche, what we wanted to do.
So how did, so I guess, were you just always drawn to, you said you like the small calf aspect of it, taking care of them. So what was it that drew you, I guess, is there memories or certain aspects that you remember about why you like the beef cattle, or what kind of drove your passion that way?
Well, we started out with, smaller herds and stuff, and, as a young boy, we were always helping our dad, and at that time, we didn't have a large herd, so it wasn't a lot of, cattle, but we were always taking care of them, because we had started calving in February back in those days, back in the 50s and 60s, and the reason you calved out so early is because you had to help with some of the farming operation, so everybody, you wanted to be done calving by the time you were able to go into the field, and it wasn't matter, if it was, a smalling farming operation at that time, but that was the thing, years ago, everybody had to be done with their calves, had to be done calving and stuff before their farming operation started. And the way we can do this right now is I don't have much to do with the farming operation in the spring, and then I can devote most of my time to the beef operation. And when we had the dairy operation, we had milkers, my wife and my brother's wife, and we had 2 hired girls that would do the milking. And so that wasn't, such a big deal, but the cattle operation, the beef operation, it's you have to pay close attention to it. And the first, maybe 20 years that we had the beef operation, we calved everything at our home place, and our home place is just, it was a little too crowded for them, to have all the dairy cows and the beef cows. So, back in the early 70s, we started taking our cattle to a pasture. We trailed them up to a pasture and a place that we had north of our ranch, and actually where the original homestead is, and there's all pasture land up there. So we calve out all the cows in the middle of April. Towards the end of April, we calve them all out on the grass out there. And it really makes a difference. I mean, it basically just, you don't have any problems at all as far as sicknesses. You might get one snowstorm or something like that, maybe in mid-April or something, but it's not like it used to be where you were always fighting the cold and you always had to have these calves inside or something, so it's really worked out well for us.
So how has the beef herd progressed from the early or the 50s, 60s to now? What kind of stages or experiments have you gone through, or misfires have you gone through to get to where your herd is now?
Yeah, our herd, our herd started out, it's just like everybody else's herd in the county or the state. It started out with the Hereford base operation, the horned Hereford. And from the horned Hereford, we knew that we could do a little bit better, so we incorporated the shorthorn. And the shorthorn gave us a little more milk, and there is actually some of the shorthorn that we started buying were pulled. And we didn't like dehorning calves and stuff like that back then. And so we went from the Hereford base to the shorthorn. From the shorthorn, we went to the Simmental cross. And the Simmental, and that was back in the day when Simmentals were blonde, they were white-faced, they were all colors,
And big.
And big cattle. You couldn't afford to feed them most of the time. So what we did was we went more into red Angus and black Angus, and now we have Simmental red Angus and Simmental black Angus with not much more than a quarter and not a half, almost a little better than a quarter base Simmental in there, and you keep the cows to a moderate frame, but then you still have the gaining ability and stuff and the hybrid vigor that you want in a crossbred cow.
Mm-hmm.
And the calves, everything shows through where the genetics have gotten better, and with help from our AI distributors like Select Sires. I serve on the Select Sires board of directors from Minnesota Select Sires, and they incorporate that we have North Dakota and Minnesota together. And I serve on the National Beef Sire Committee for Select Sires, and through that you can get the genetics that you need. And in this day and age, through genomics, DNA testing and everything, you can just about tell exactly what you need, or you got someone from that company that comes out and looks at your cattle, through the years and just tells you, this is what you need to do with your herd. And that happened, 30 years ago, when we knew we could go from an average cow to a better cow to a good cow to an elite cow. And the purebred operations are the ones that helped us too. The Angus breeders and the purebred Simmental breeders helped us quite a bit. And the red Angus breeders, they know what we needed, and through that, and through selection and using AI companies or Select Sires really helped us a lot.
So you taken what you described as like so how small was small in the 50s and 60s for cow size or herd numbers?
Well, herd numbers, I think, for the average farmer was probably, I would say 50 to 60, maybe 100 head, was some of the average size of the ranches back then. But back in those days, it was everybody had, most of the people had milk cows.
Yeah.
And most of the people milked because, it was a way of providing a monthly or a weekly paycheck that they needed to pay the average bills, to pay the grocery bill, to pay, the utility bills and stuff, and then they expanded their beef herds a little more, and we kind of did the same thing. We kind of expanded our beef herd and expanded the dairy herd. The family got bigger. I mean, there was 11 of us, brothers and sisters, so we all kept pretty busy just, working on the farm, with Dad and Mom.
So, okay, so you've taken over the beef herd, so where are you up, so what are your numbers at now? Where have you taken it?
We've taken it probably from 150 head of cows to right around almost 1,300 calf pairs.
Okay.
And we don't run yearlings or anything like that. We just run the cow calf side of it because we have a feedlot that we had remodeled and redone probably about 7-8 years ago. So we're able to make it environmentally friendly, so there was no runoff or anything that was going into any of the rivers and the streams where it wasn't supposed to go. So we have a feedlot right now, and we'll background those calves till they're about 750, 800 pounds, and then we'll sell them through private treaty or a local auction market or something, and we won't finish them. We just haven't got the time or the I'd say money. We don't retain ownership, so someone else takes over after you sell them, and they'll feed them.
So what are you doing with, so how is your calving in the end of April, May? How do you manage the cows for breeding and stuff? How do you make the breeding decisions, and what are you doing there?
There's about half of the herd is natural bred with some of the best bulls that we can buy and that we can afford to buy, and about 1/4 or almost half of the cattle are AI'd through artificial insemination, and we use the top of the line genetics, and like I said, you can almost pick what you want, in your herd and what you think will improve your herd as you're going along, and if there's something missing in your herd and you think you want to tweak it a little bit. It's so easy to do that right now with all the proven genetics that are out there right now, and the people that are helping you, and through Select Sires, we've really, really improved our genetics, and it's really helped to have someone else's opinion. If you think you're doing everything right, then you should have someone, just look at your herd and then tell you,
Yeah.
and if you're doing something wrong, they'll let you know. And I thank a lot of people for doing that. If they thought that we should be doing this and we should be doing that, and lo and behold, a couple years later, you noticed what they noticed, and you're happy for that. You appreciate the fact of what they've done for you, and how they helped you improve your herd over the years, and you could just see it.
Yep. So what are you doing are you keeping heifers back every year, or how do you bringing in those genetics and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's basically what we do. Is we keep our heifers back. We've been our beef herd has been closed for over 40 years. We've had a closed herd for over 40 years. The only thing that we keep, we don't buy anything but the bulls that we use to breed with, and we've never bought in heifers. We've never bought in cows in the last 40 years. So your health and everything that your cattle have is because of what you did, and it makes a big difference. If you keep your herd closed, you don't have a problem with someone else's diseases coming into your herd or having other problems that you probably wouldn't have if you had a closed herd, and basically it just really helps your health program. It's you don't have to worry about those unseen sicknesses or anything like that if you keep your herd closed like that. And you can see it, you have outcross breeding where you can, if you get too much of this in your genetics or your breeding or something like that, then you could see, the big difference it does when you have a closed herd.
So what are you keeping back on average then?
We're keeping back on the cows that we have right now. We'll keep back at least 200 heifers every year that'll come into your herd the next year, and you'll be calling out at least 100 head, that you want to get rid of. Older cows that probably won't make it for another year or something like that, but you call out the ones that you don't want. It just makes your herd and improves your herd a lot better. And so you'll keep back at least 150 to 200 heifers. You'll artificially breed those to whatever you think you want to, and how you want to improve your herd, and that's the way we do it.
So in that article I was reading, you got a pretty neat, it almost seems like a family get-together for your protocol for working calves in mid-June. So kind of tell me through that process.
Well, when the cows are all calved out, and right at the beginning of June, the cows are all, the acreage that they're on right there is probably about almost 2,800 to 3,000 acres where the cow-calf pairs are all roaming on. And we'll have them in different paddocks, in different pastures. And it seems like, you think it's a small pasture, but it's a larger pasture. And then we'll have, like, the first calf heifers will be in one pasture with their calves, and then the second calf heifers will be in a pasture with their calves. So you'll take them in, you'll take the first calf heifers in first, you'll work them, and then you'll put them wherever you want to put them in different pastures, since we have 14 different pastures where we put them in. So there's a little bit of traveling and stuff. The farthest pasture is probably about 30 miles away. And then you'll go the next day or 2 days later, you go into the second calf heifers where you'll put them in different places, and they'll, a place close by, where you can bring them back to AI and artificial breed those. And then you'll go into where the older cows are, the brood cows, and they're in different pastures too, so you bring them in, and you'll probably work a couple hundred at one time, and all the calves are, they're branded, they're vaccinated with any shots that they need. And then after they're branded and vaccinated, while you're doing that, you're weighing the calves. The calves all get weighed when they're born. You catch the calf is in a calf catcher is what we have. You weigh all the calves when they're born. I weigh the calves when we brand them to see how well they're doing and how many pounds, and the average pound gain that they're getting, from the date of birth until the middle of June where you take them out to pasture. And then when you wean the calves, we'll weigh all the calves when we wean them. So it kind of gives you a good notion of how they're doing, which calves are performing the best, and if those cows are performing and the way they're supposed to be with the calf on the side, and it gives you a real good idea of what kind of cattle you should be keeping back, and those heifer calves that are really performing, those are the ones that you want to keep back. And so it's works out pretty well.
So that in that article it says it takes takes 10, 12 days to do it, so you kind of take your time doing it to try not stress the animals and such like that, or what's kind of the idea behind that?
It's low stress cow handling is what we stress, and it's not only for the low stress for the cattle, it's low stress for the people that are helping. Everybody has, it may not be a big job, but it's going to be a small job. Everybody does their job. And it's like anything else, if everybody's in tune and doing what they're supposed to be doing, everything runs smooth. And that's the way with any operation or anybody who's working with cattle and stuff. It's, you don't want a high stress, and that just scares the cattle. So we just try to be as low stress as we can.
And being from in coming out west here, it seems like I'm learning more about brands. So just tell me about your brand and how you came up with it. I know there's kind of a story behind that.
Well, the story behind the brand is when my great-grandfather's brand was a 54, 5 and a 4 right beside each other. And then my grandfather kept that brand from my great-grandfather. And when my dad decided to brand the cattle, we took the 4, put it on top, and we had 4 over 5. And it really no rhyme or reason for that. It's just the idea that we kept the same two numbers that our great-grandfather, when he homesteaded and he registered his brand, that's the one that he had, and we just kept those two numbers just like that.
Is there any, do you know of any significance between for the numbers 5-4? Is there anything there, you know why?
No, and I someday, you'd like to talk, to, but everybody has passed away, where that did mean anything, but back in those days, the number brands were really one of the big things. The number brand, and now you have letter brands, you have different brands and stuff, but back then it was just, and then you register that brand right now with the Stockmen's Association, which we belong to. We're charter members of the Stockmen's Association, and they brand inspect any cattle that are going out of the state. Any cattle that are coming into the state has to be inspected, and it really helps a lot to keep track of any diseases or anything like that, or people stealing cattle. They'll catch that, if he brings a calf in there through a sales barn that has your brand on it, and there was no authority that you gave him authority to sell your calf or something, which comes into play where you have to have a brand release. And if you have a brand release that I'm releasing my brand and you bought that calf or something, then it's fine. But, that's how they catch the people that'll steal cattle and stuff. That's how. And the Stockmen's Association is a great organization and probably one of the oldest in the state of North Dakota. And the Stockmen's Association basically helps you take care of your cattle, helps you watch over your ranch, and it's so cheap. It's $50 a year to become a member, and they do all kinds of legislation for you. They provide a lot of help for you as a rancher and a farmer. They help you out, and it's a very cheap membership for $50 a year, and they're basically taking care of your family. Watching over, making sure that we don't get the wrong legislation in the legislature. They legislate a lot, and they have different programs that you can be a part of, and we really appreciate them.
Have you ever had an instance where you had to worry about theft or anything? You had any stories like that?
No, but back in the day, there was a lot of stories where, people would be stealing them, but they do a very good job. They'll catch somebody once in a while, and it's it's something you don't want to brag about or anything like that when you get caught or something.
Yeah.
But they're like the hidden police force, as for farmers and ranchers. They really help us a lot.
Going back, you said your feedlot, you've kind of designed it to catch all the runoff and all that. You were saying yesterday you guys are up for a conservation award, or I guess it's something like that. What's that about? Or I guess what is that award, or you're up for?
Well, it's what it's called. It's called it's through the Stockmen's Association, and you become a candidate. And this is the third year, I think, that we were a candidate for it. And what it is, it's your environmental stewardship. The things that you do on your ranch that help, your sustainability, of being around for a long time. And the feedlot, the Stockmen's Association helped us really redo our feedlot and stuff so that we could comply with all the environmental regulations and everything. So there's actually, our feedlot consists of almost 160 acres, and there's absolutely no runoff. It all goes into a large lagoon. And the things that we do as far as stewardship, we have plots where we have planted for deer, and you keep residue, and we have no-till farming. We have variable rate seeding, fertilizing, and just the things you do for the environment so that your land is sustainable, and you could still be here in the next generation and generations to come by taking care of the land.
So this morning we went out and looked at cows and stuff. You were just talking about kind of what's the, just being a farmer, being a rancher, and just trying to, you were talking about producing beef, and that's kind of the end goal. Like you want to make a good product for the consumer. So has that always been kind of your mindset, your drive for producing beef cattle is to make a good product at the end? Has that always been, or did you kind of work into that mindset?
No, it was always, years ago, a lot of the, your grandfathers and stuff, they thought that that's what the best thing to do is, to do what they could and raise, beef to eat and everything. But we're actually, you could say that we're providing the best protein that, the consumer wants. And that's the thing, you have to give the consumer what they want. And if you're not raising, what they're wanting and stuff, it's you're not doing it right. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to provide them with a protein. We're trying to provide them with a product that everybody will enjoy. And you have to sell your byproduct. If you're going to raise this product, you have to be able to sell it. So in one way, you could say we're grass farmers. We're turning the grass into a beef protein where the consumer is going to consume it, and you want to make sure that it's a great experience for them. Anybody who's had a good hamburger or a good steak in a restaurant or something like that, you want it to be a good experience for them, because they'll be back and they'll say, I need to, I just love this place. I said I love the way the meat tastes, and I just love the end product. So that's kind of what you're striving for, is to raise the best product that the consumer wants and still be sustainable and show those people, what you do every day just to try to make, this product available to them.
So that's what you're doing. So then tell me about, what's the ranching lifestyle mean to you? Where does growing up in that style, raising your kids in that environment, your whole family, as far as I can tell, has been in this lifestyle of farming and ranching. So what's that entail to you?
Oh, it's been a great experience. I don't think I'd give it up. I don't think there's three of I had 4 girls, and we have 16 grandkids, just us, our family does. And they can't wait to come back to have that experience. They just love coming back to the farm. They just love knowing, what we do. And those kids live in some of the bigger cities in the country too. And they tell their friends, that this is what we do, and this is how we produce this. And some of the kids that they talk to, they don't have any idea what it's like in rural life, or what it's like to be in the wide open spaces, or be able to walk a half a mile and not have to worry about, something happening or something like that, and it means a lot to them, to be part of a rural America, and stuff, to be able to be part of, I would guess, I'm thinking, where you're out in the country, and even though your kids move away, and even though your kids are in like towns and cities, they at least know where their beef comes from and how it's produced, how we treat our animals, and it's just it's a great lifestyle to grow up in, I think, and they really appreciate it. And they appreciate it to the fact that, they can't wait to come back out here and see it, every time they come out. It's a new experience for them.
So what is your, legacy of this place? What do you strive to do out here for the future generations of this particular operation?
Well, I think the main thing is to make sure that, we're sustainable, that if you're here for 50, 60 years or something like that, that the next generation that's coming in, and I would never be able to sit here and talk about this if it wasn't for my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather probably had the same vision, that he wanted to make things that better for his family, and his children, and my grandfather wanted to do the same, and my father wanted to do the same. You should always leave the land, you should always leave something better than when you got it, and you should always strive to do things better, and I guess, we're just here for a brief time, we're here, and God's still the caretaker. I mean, you try to take care of the land, you try to do whatever you can, but he's still the one that's going to give you the crop. You have nothing to say about that. If he doesn't want it to rain, it's not going to rain.
Yep.
So you got to give your praise to him, because you have to believe in him too, and it makes a big difference, and it makes you see what you're striving for, your children and stuff.
So what are your thoughts on the beef industry currently, and where do you think it's going, or how do you think things are right now?
Oh, I think the beef industry is going to be, it's on a kind of a small turnaround right now. We are having trouble with trade agreements and stuff, and I mean, we raise a lot of good beef in the United States and in America here, and we just need some of the trade and stuff like that to be more fair. We're looking more, everybody said, we should get this and we should get that, but we're just looking for some fair trade, where all the other countries, they absolutely need American beef. They love American beef. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make it so that, they want it. I mean, and they can't stand not having our beef. And I think our export markets and stuff like that, we really have to work on those export markets. And a lot of the people know what our beef is like, and we just politically, everybody's just at a standstill here, and it's just one party against the other party. But they don't forget when they get to Washington D.C. they're dealing with the livelihood of millions and millions of people. Whatever they decide there, it might be just a stroke of a pen that's going to change the life of rural America, or it's going to change your life as a family. I mean, our end product, we have to get paid for our end product so that we can make a living too. And all we want is a fair shake. That's basically what we want, is a fair shake. And if we can get that, we're happy. And it's just, I mean, when you bring the political side of it in, they kind of lose sight of it all, and each one of them, I think those congressmen and the senators should spend a week or 2 weeks out on the busiest time on a ranch to see exactly what we're going through and what we're doing for them, so they can come out of recess and go into an office or order in a hamburger or something like that when they're in their big offices, to realize where this is all coming from. And we're not asking for much, we're just asking for a fair shake.
So are you willing to have some help then for calving season next year?
Yes, I am. Come on out, John.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts, advice for young folks trying to get into the agricultural industry or the beef sector? From what I can tell, it's pretty tough to get started. So what's your advice there?
Well, that's the thing too. Mostly all of the operations around our county, around our state, are all family operations. And, it was easier for us to get into it. But, when you have 3 or 4 people involved, or 3 or 4 brothers involved and stuff like that, you have to make sure that the income there is for 4 families and stuff, And the technology has gotten, the machinery has gotten so costly, but the technology is there right now, where you can, and it gets back to where we got to try to be able to have more exports, and I mean, sure, we'll import a lot of the products from other countries, but we also need to export, and we can feed our nation. I mean, we can feed the nation, but we also have to, it's kind of hard to, for younger guys to get into it, but if you're a family operation, there's always a little bit of room, for them to get into the operation and be a part of the operation. It's just, it might take a little longer to have ownership or something like that, and you really don't have ownership. I mean, you're operating and stuff, and you're making ends meet from year to year, and it has to be that they want to be able to do that, and with the technology nowadays, it's just, an acre of land, you could hardly produce anything off it years and years ago, and right now, you're probably raising 5 times more than you did back in the 30s, and you have no open ground, you have no till farming, you are saving the soil, your pastures are getting, you're treating your pastures a lot better than they did years ago, because if the grass got too short on one pasture, you move them into another pasture if you can. So it's sustainability. I mean, you got to be able to keep doing this, otherwise you won't be able to. And the question whether, the next generation comes into it, it kind of plays itself into it, I mean, if they really want to be a part of it, they'll find a way, and we'll find a way for them to be able to. We'll try to do that with the next generation. I guess I can't talk too much because I had 4 daughters. So there's probably none of my daughters are going to be coming back, but 3 of the daughters that I have are farmers and ranchers. They have farmers and ranches and work off the farm. Their son-in-laws all work off the farm, and they still run cattle and have different farming and ranching operations.
So I just have to say that I'm pretty awestruck by this North Dakota scenery. It's pretty amazing to see it. You were telling a story about my wife's on a mission to see some free-range buffalo, and you told us a story last night of a buffalo herd around here. So I gotta hear that story again. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, there was one spot here, not very far from us. I mean, we've found Indian artifacts and stuff like that, lots of them, in our part of the country. And I mean,
what Indians were out here? I guess what were the tribes?
I would say the Ogallala tribes and the Sioux tribes. They were the ones that were out here. And the story about the buffalo, I mean, they were here. I mean, when I showed you this morning, I showed you a teepee ring there, and probably where there was a fire pit years and years ago, and you wouldn't think that would be true, but you seen it with your own eyes where you seen it, and the part where they probably kept a lot of their meat and stuff like that, and their meat was salted and stuff, and you could see where our cattle through the years have dug holes there where they know that there's something there, whether it was a fire pit or what it was, but the story about the buffalo was it was kind of a side hill, and the buffalo one winter is what happened is they went into this big coulee, and they were covered up with snow, and couldn't move where they were, and eventually got covered up with ground, and stayed in that one coulee, and they were just like right beside each other. And they built a road there back in the 1930s. They built a road right where they were, and as soon as it started washing out down through the creeks and stuff, there was like 10-foot banks on each side, and you could go in there and you could see the full-scale buffalo skeleton, the head, everything, and for many years, people took some of those buffalo skulls out of there and stuff, and it's kind of a well-kept secret, in the neighborhood, and that's the way it was. I mean, they perished, by trying to stay out of the cold and stuff, so the buffalo didn't know any better. They just stuck together, and that's the way they died. They died together in that big coulee. Yeah.
So there must be. Do you know much of the Native American history out here? What happened out here? Or how does it? Do you know any of that kind of stuff?
No, I don't know a lot about the Native Americans that were here before and stuff, but it's you see artifacts. We've found a few artifacts and stuff where they were here, and we have a monument down on the Heart River down there where that was called the Heart River Corral, and it was actually an immigrant camp that was camped out there and stuff for 3 or 4 days, before they moved on, So there's a little bit of history, and history is a lot of fun to look back on.
Yeah, cool. I gotta ask. So yesterday when I got here, you were wearing a T-shirt with a cow print on it, and it had the 45 or the 4 over the 5 brand on there, but the cow had a specific ear tag. I think it was
982.
982. So I guess there's some stories behind this cow. So I gotta hear some of them or something.
Well, she was back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I tagged all the calves, either with a horse or a four-wheeler or something like that. And this particular cow, she was just a great mom. She knew exactly where her calf was all the time, and you could always, it was a running joke, that everybody would say, did 982 have her calf yet, And I would just tell them, I said, don't worry, you'll know when she has her calf. And she was just a possessive mom, and she was a great mama cow. And she would just come at you. She wouldn't care. She wouldn't care if you had the biggest pickup there or anything like that. If you were handling her calf, just like any other mother on any species, she wanted to take care of her calf. And that's what she did until, she was open 1 year, and after that we sold her.
Yeah. So there's a lot of history behind that cow to make T-shirts about her and all that stuff.
Yeah, it was a running joke with my girls, and one of my daughters helped me 1 year, and she got to know 982. They all knew 982 because she was always a mean cow.
So I guess what's kind of getting towards the end here? What's next for Mark Messer? How much longer you got in this, and then is there a beef taker over guy, or who's gonna run the next generation of cattle here?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I plan on doing it. We plan on doing it for quite a while yet, and maybe somebody, one of my brother's boys or something, will get into it or decide what to do. But I think we'll be going for quite a while yet and stuff, and we have the beef herd where we want it, and we just want to improve on it through superior genetics and stuff where we can, you can predict, what your cattle are going to be in the fall when you bring those calves in. You can almost, predict, saying that this is what they're going to weigh and this is what they're going to look like. The heifers that are going to be, cows in your herd, exactly what they're going to be like. And that's kind of my goal, to be sustainable as far as, the cow herd, not get your cows too big, or too small, so they can survive the winters in North Dakota. And we've probably done a pretty good job of straightening all that out and being able to have just the right type of cow that'll thrive, and the calves will thrive in the feedlot, and they'll thrive. I mean, they'll be good in any feedlot where you sell these calves, and that's a big thing. You have a reputation of having some of the better calves or something like that, and that's what you want. I want something that either the buyers are going to like. I want to produce something that the consumers are going to like and know what you're doing. And it's come to the point where you need to know exactly what you're doing. You need to know exactly what you're producing. And because the consumer is the end person, I mean, they're the ones that we're asking to buy these products that we're producing, whether it's the grains that we're producing, whether it's the meat and the protein that we're producing, the dairy industry, it's the calcium, we're selling vitamins. I mean, we're selling protein. You could say you're a beef producer, but you're actually selling the most essential and the most vital protein that you can have, in your body. So that's kind of where I'm thinking that's striving for.
Yeah, well, that's good. So just quickly here, I gotta give you the opportunity. So I found Mark. Earlier this week I was at another ranch in North Dakota, and a friend of mine from college called me and said, I got I got a guy for you if you want to stop and say it. So you got any stories on our mutual friend, Mr. Check over here?
No, I don't. I really don't. I know Brent through his dad. His dad served on the Select Sires board with me, the Minnesota Select Sires board with me when they brought on North Dakota, and I served with Brent's dad, a very good guy. He served. He was a president of our board, the local board, and he was the president of the national board, which was really a great honor for Minnesota. And Brent is now serving in the spot where his dad is serving. And, you know, like I mentioned at the North Dakota Stockman Association before, there's so many families, you know, that their dads were officers and presidents of the Stockman's Association, and they took over for their dad too, you know, were elected into office and stuff. So it's, you know, it's somewhat of a pride, you know, where you can follow in your dad's footsteps or something, you know, and that really means a lot, and that's what it is about family operations, you know. It's all about family. It really is what it is.
Well, that's great. So, well, Mark, I want to thank you so much for allowing me to show up out of the blue and just call you and convince you to let me come, and even though you had to do some calling and vetting to make sure I was legitimate, but that's all right. I understand that, but thanks for letting me come in here and letting my family come and hang out and get to see the calving shack and whatnot. I really appreciate it.
Yes, and I appreciate you, John. And I got a question for you. I said,
Shoot.
What made you in your heart to do something like this to help promote the beef industry and what you're doing and everything? What made you think that this is something that you would like to do?
To be honest, growing up, I never, even though I did farm with my brother for 7 years there, to be honest, I never really, growing up, I always said that I wanted to do something in agriculture, but didn't really want to farm. I wanted to do something that helped producers, that helped farmers, and so I just kind of always had different ideas, but kind of fell in, but I went back home and to the roots of farming and whatnot, but just how opportunities came, my brother and I decided to get out of farming for a while, and I guess that allowed me to kind of jump at one of my ideas to help promote agriculture and do that, and I'm really fond of the beef side. That's where my passion lies, so I thought, let's start a podcast for the beef industry, and let's just, you know, my wife's an adventurous type of gal, so she was all for travel and stuff, so we just kind of said, let's do it. The kids are young enough, so they're not in school, so we could travel now and kind of just see if this turns into something. So it's just I'm loving it so far. It's just seeing all these different operations, meeting ranchers and beef producers all across the country, and I'm excited for the future. It's amazing to see what you guys do, and just I'm in awe of everything that I see. It's just neat to see what you guys do in different areas of the world, or I guess the region of the nation. And it not only am I trying to promote for you guys, but it's a learning for me too, and just seeing how everybody does it all over the United States.
Well, that's awesome, because I've listened to a few of your podcasts already, and I think you are doing a very good job, and I salute you for that.
Well,
thank you, John.
Well, thank you, Mark, and we're gonna let this combine, or let this tractor get going here so we can keep this wheat going. So, but thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a good one. And there you have it, folks. That was Mark Messer of Messer Beaver Creek Ranch. Once again, thanks to everybody who took the time to listen to the podcast. I really do appreciate it. And if you could, I would really, really like it if you would go and give me a 5-star rating on iTunes and whatnot, and share this podcast with your friends and family on Facebook and Instagram. So thanks, guys. Have a great day.